What's up, everyone? Today, we're going to be discussing the 25th anniversary of an album that I think changed everything for anything that was considered alternative music in the early 2000s. This record is considered a post-hardcore record. Now, once 2000s came around, there was many different subgenre titles thrown around and overused. There was a lot of them. Post-hardcore, emo core, screamo, uh, metalcore. Like there was just it's everything. It's music. It's music. I hate getting into labels and genres and subgenres because someone's going to disagree with it. They call this a post-hardcore record. Now, I guess it could be considered post-hardcore. What is post-hardcore? Post-hardcore, I guess, to me and the way I have always understood it is it's a hardcore band that has they make it sound like it moved past being hardcore, where you were introducing different elements, you were progressing as a musician or songwriter or expressing your art in a wider range than being hardcore, but you still had the ethos and the ethics and the moral code and the foundation, the DIY punk rock movement of hardcore. With that said, this record I think did a lot for the quote unquote emo movement. There's actually two more records from 2001 that I'm going to talk about as the weeks go on. I'm going to do a different record every week. I want to talk about a specific record that I think it changed something. It had impact. And this one today we're talking about is from Victory Records, put it out. The great Tony Brummel, who ran Victory Records, put this out. Unfortunately, there's plenty of horror stories for him, and we're going to get into a little bit of that today. Not a lot, but a little bit, just to shine a little bit of light on who that guy was and the face behind the bulldog at Victory. So if you know the Victory Records logo, there's a little bulldog there. But today we're talking about Full Collapse from Thursday. This band is from New Jersey, and boy oh boy, when this record came out, they were more than on my radar at that after that. This band put out this record in April of 2001, and the video for Understanding in a Car Crash came out later that fall. Once I saw that video on MTV2, because I had MTV2, thankfully, very, very grateful because there was so much on MTV and MTV2, because there wasn't a lot on MTV at the time. MTV2 and Much Music, which later changed to Fuse. It changed its name and its format and everything. It changed to it's Canadian MTV, pretty much, Fuse was. But before it was Fuse, it was called Much Music. And in 2001, when Thursday put this out and I saw that video for Understanding in a Car Crash, I was immediately obsessed with that song and this band. I needed more of it. I didn't buy this record for, I think, about 6 or 7 months after it came out. My friend Rick, shout out Rick, wherever you may roam, Rick bought this record, I want to say around like winter 2001 going into 2002, and I borrowed it from him and we hung out a lot. So I listened to Thursday's Full Collapse incessantly because Rick picked this up, my buddy Rick, and we listened to this thing insane amounts. We put it like, and what was cool about the time, I had an Xbox, he had a PS2. At the time, you could upload things. You could upload things. You can upload CDs onto your Xbox and then play whatever CD you've downloaded onto your Xbox while you play the game. You could play a wrestling game. You could play a Tony Hawk. You could play a Tony Hawk game while you played the music of your choosing from your Xbox that's already uploaded in your Xbox. Way ahead of its time. Something I wish you could do these days too, because the Madden soundtrack is pretty brutal. I mean, it was not bad this year, but a lot of stuff I don't really listen to. A lot of stuff I would never be caught dead listening to that I would love to listen to while I'm playing Madden. Also, go Bills. And listen, when this record came out, it was right around the time in 2001 where I was hearing a lot of subgenres. Because before that, when I talk 1998 and 99 and probably half of 2000, there was punk. There was like poser punk, which was what people would call, I loved and adored the Ramones, the Sex Pistols, Crass. Shout out to my cousin, showed me Crass at a young age. Bands like that, Dead Kennedys, Social Distortion, bands like that were considered punk. Social Distortion obviously had like a rockabilly element to them as well, but those were considered bands that were punk and liked by punkers. Punkers that were liked by punks. But then there was a segment. I still loved all that music. I grew up on 70s rock from my father, and I liked a lot of 80s pop. I loved Madonna at a young age. Like, I remember just listening to the Madonna stuff just as a kid, just because it was out. Like, especially like, a lot of the 80s stuff was just played. It was cassettes around the house and things like that. Michael Jackson's Thriller. But anyway, I digress. The term, pop punk really didn't come along. It didn't really come along. I don't remember it being really talked about or said in like 2000, 2001, 2002. Now, obviously was a label, but it wasn't used like it was now. Anybody that was relatively like had a poppy sensibility is considered pop punk now, or has been over the last 20 years. But in those early years, for me, when I was getting into a lot of this stuff, Thursday wasn't a band that was ever considered punk, but I heard the term hardcore, and then when this record came out, I heard the term post-hardcore in 2001, and I was like, "Oh, what's post-hardcore? Post means after." So this is like they were a hardcore band, and now they're not a hardcore band. And after listening to it, it is a very like, again, forgive me for the term. It's stupid. It sounds dumb, I know. But emo, they were an emo-ish band where they were very it was an emotional, aggressive response via music. But at the time, I didn't really think about labels. I didn't care about labels. I knew that this band Thursday from New Jersey put out a record called Full Collapse, and I saw the video for Understanding in a Car Crash on MTV2, and I loved it. I think it was like MTV Control Freak. And I can't remember. Control Freak was the one. I can't remember. There was a TV show on MTV2. I think it was called Control Freak, where they'd play videos, and then there'd be 3 videos on the side where if you had internet, which I didn't have internet in 2001, you could go and vote for one of the 3 videos that was on the side, and then whatever one won, they would play the next one. It was really cool. I loved that show. And they would play things like, bam. Like, I remember when this was a buzzworthy video or whatever, and they did like a premiere or whatever for Understanding in a Car Crash. And when I heard it, everything changed. My friend bought this album. I later picked it up, but I had it on my Xbox because he would bring over CDs. I would let him borrow some of mine. He would burn mine. He'd bring them over to my house. I didn't have a computer at the time or internet. And this was back when you could own a gaming system without the internet. Because I wasn't really playing games online. Upload Thursday Full Collapse I had on my Xbox. That's how I had at that until like, I don't know, like a year later or whatever, I ended up picking this up. And yeah, obsessed with this record. Just everything about this record had a mood and a vibe. And that's what I was really looking for in those early years of listening to music. Is I love the cohesive album sound and feel and song to song. This wasn't like, we live in a day and age where you put on a song and then you set it and forget it, or you skip around and you just listen to singles, and that's kind of the model. It is, it's a 10-second Tom world we live in now. But back when, in the early 2000s, this record came out, I listened to the full thing. And, the other single, Cross Out the Eyes, amazing song. That one, for a long time, I think was my favorite song. But now, there is, like, every song in this record. Paris in Flames, amazing. I Am the Killer, amazing. Standing on the Edge of Summer. Man, this record is... in Concealer. Concealer is by far my favorite song on this record, actually. This record is so good. Highly advise you to listen to it. So, they put this record out, and this was a big, big, big release for Victory Records. And I remember... I was like, oh, I've never heard of Victory Records. And then, you see like little things. And when I would go to school, this is 2001, I would go into our media center and I would look up Thursday. I was going to victoryrecords.com, going to Victory Records. And, 2001 is really when all my musical tastes changed. Like, I found Victory Records, I found Trustkill Records, I discovered Poison the Well, I discovered 18 Visions, I discovered Shai Hulud, Bane, American Nightmare, all these hardcore bands, and bands like this that were post-hardcore, and my world was opened up. Like, this was easily, this could be accessible accessible to what I was listening to at the time, which was Saves the Day, Newfound Glory. This wasn't a huge stretch from them. It was darker, it was a little different. And then when I really started to get into more hardcore and metalcore stuff, early metalcore stuff before it became really, really terrible in the later 2000s into the 2010s, that stuff's terrible. But a lot of bands I found, through finding Victory Records and finding this record, and seeing Thursday in early 2002, like seeing I think it was right around this time when I saw that this record came out. When the video came out in fall 2001, I was finding all these other labels. I'm finding Ferret Records. I'm finding this. And then I'm finding out that all these bands are playing in Syracuse 20 minutes away from me. And it changed everything. Like I was then, hooked. I'm going to see bands in early 2002 and it was all over. I was listening, but I never stopped. Like there's a lot of kids that got into hardcore and at the time what's now can be considered metalcore. A lot of them would, kind of negate some of the other stuff like this, or even, Dashboard Confessional put out a huge record, Places You Come to Fear the Most, in 2001. That was a huge record. That's 25 years this year. And I was listening to all that, and then, you get into Vagrant, and then I'm getting into Alkaline Trio, and it was just, 2001 by far was the formative year for me discovering all these bands that I would fall in love with. I already loved Blink-182. I already loved Newfound Glory. I already loved Saves the Day. There was plenty of those bands. And of course, the punk stuff, like Ramones, have been my favorite band since, I don't know, late 90s. But in 2001, I was finding all this stuff that bridged beyond punk and was considered other subgenres that was busting out, and beyond like what I was considering like what people would call, Newfound Glory, Blink-182, Green Day, stuff like that. They would call it like like a poser punk, a lighter punk, a more poppy punk. But before pop punk was a term that was thrown around a lot. It was obviously a term, something to say. But yeah, this record really helped bridge the gap for me to liking the classic punk rock stuff. And like I said, I grew up as my father was a teenager of the 70s. I grew up loving Blue Oyster Cult and Led Zeppelin and Nazareth and Aerosmith and all this great 70s bands. And then, late 90s, I start finding early punk, like, the Stooges and of course, like that's proto-punk, but, the Ramones, Crass, Dead Kennedys, all these early punk rock bands. And I thought that I had found that, and I was just like, I'll never, I'm going to be a punk rock guy until I die. And I am. Ramones are still my favorite band of all time. But little did I know, in just a few years, I would discover this record, discover Victory Records, realize like, oh, yeah, I've heard the name Earth Crisis, but I didn't know, this band just broke up. Just broke up like a couple months ago. And they're from Syracuse, and they're straight edge, and I discovered straight edge and everything like that, and was a fan of Throwdown and 18 Visions, and it's all just, it really starts kind of here. At least around this time, fall 2001, I'm finding so much stuff, an insane amount of stuff. Summer 2001 too. Summer 2001, I think, is when a friend of mine, he was dating a friend's sister at the time. He had given us a Bane, had Bane burned on it, and I think it had Every Time I Die and Disembodied and a bunch of stuff. That's, that was a gateway that summer. And then finding this, and then really like getting me more involved and be like, oh, there's independent record labels that are putting out these amazing bands. And I think this was the first non-huge record that I bought at a Walmart. I remember, buying this. I actually bought this at a Walmart. Victory got distribution, and this was at a Walmart. I bought this at a Walmart. I couldn't at the time, it was like, man, I can't believe they have this at Walmart. I felt so underground. They felt so underground, and little did I know that they were slowly blowing up. And this was Victory Records, like, this was one of their biggest releases at the time. Up until that point, I don't think anything was bigger than this. Like, it came out, it debuted, I think, in the 140s or something like that on on the Billboard charts, and it really got them ground. Granted, they ended up leaving. There's a bunch of problems. There's every band that's been on Victory has had a problem with Victory Records, whether it be him hiring people to go buy or hide the Neo albums from the Hawthorne Heights second record that came out. Problems with Hatebreed. I don't know what the problems with Hatebreed were specifically, but everybody that signed to Victory slowly and surely got off Victory. I think Victory still owns like the Atreyu records, so that's why they re-recorded a record recently. Everybody that signed to Victory had an issue with Victory. Thursday was all the same. So when they were touring on this, they wanted to limit the cover art, and the artwork in general is just, it's black on the inside, white on the outside. It's very like, I didn't mind it at the time. I didn't think, I thought this was very intriguing for a band to do this. But this record was very bland. And it was apparently to save money. Tony Brummel wanted to save money. Very, very simple layout. The band had higher aspirations for the way the layout was going to look and the cover and things like that, I think. And he wanted to save a buck. But he was also printing, I think I read, he's printing whoopee cushions. I remember hearing that story years ago, that he was printing Thursday whoopee cushions and handing them out on Warped Tour, didn't tell the band about it. And there's just, and the guys effed more people out of money than you could possibly imagine. That was a big thing with independent labels. They ended up doing that with a lot of bands, and Victory is not the only one. While the biggest, they did it to Bayside. A Day to Remember is probably the most recent. They had a big legal battle with A Day to Remember for A Day to Remember to get, I think, their masters back to some of their records, and just a bunch of shenanigans that happened with Tony Brummel and Victory Records and every band pretty much that's been on Victory except for maybe one or two. I can only imagine. They probably, because they put out a record and broke up, didn't have to deal with them as much as some of these other bands. But this record is so formative for me, and I'm sure it was for a lot of people. Seeing Thursday play this record in full over the last few years, every so often they'll play, I think in 2011, I think they played it, and then I think again in the last few years they've been playing like this record in full, and it's so great. And I think Thursday's playing soon again in my neck of the woods. I need to go see them. I haven't seen them in a long time, but I've always loved this band, and this was my introduction to them. Was their second full-length release, Full Collapse. If you haven't listened to this record, it's 25 years old. It's high time you checked out Thursday's Full Collapse. CDs are still relevant, baby. This is digital forever. You buy the CD. This CD was bought in probably mid 2002, so it's close to 25 years old. You buy a disc drive. You can buy a disc drive for $20-$30. Hook it up to your computer. You get it in your computer digitally forever, and then you can carry it around. This is your digital copy, technically. It's physical, but it's also can be turned digital. Can keep these forever. And I think they have a couple different vinyl variations of this out. I don't own any of their stuff on vinyl, but I do love my CDs. And if you haven't heard Thursday's Full Collapse, go check it out. There's plenty to love. And like I said, they kind of started a movement that I think a lot of kids hopped on, that they would go check out a band. They see a band they'd never heard of on a label they've never heard of, and the floodgates open. I can't be the only one. I know I'm not the only one, because I remember how big Understanding in a Car Crash, the music video was, and them, they ended up selling enough and being successful enough on tour that they signed with Island Records for War All the Time, which came out at the end of, the Q4, I think the beginning of Q4, or the whatever, I think it was September of 2003 or October. One of those months, they had their major label debut with War All the Time, the record after this one. Love that record too. But 25 years of Full Collapse. This band is great. If you haven't heard them, please listen to them. If you have, and you haven't listened to this record in a long time, give it a spin on streaming, or if you own a CD, buy the CD, throw it in a CD player and listen to it. A lot of fun. I love talking about music that I love. Music episodes are really fun. For me, I know we talk a lot of horror. We're talking a lot of 80s action, sci-fi, 80s comedy. We're going to be talking about a lot of things on the channel, but I do thoroughly enjoy the music episodes, and I have a wide range of my music taste is far and wide. I can listen to Madonna's True Blue, and then I could wear a Remembering Never shirt I could talk about Timbuk 3. They're celebrating 40 years of this record, which I absolutely love. Future So Bright, You Gotta Wear Shades. You know that song. It's on here, but that isn't the only good song on there. Also, I got to talk a couple records in 2006 celebrating 20-year anniversaries. I'd love to talk about those. I'm going to keep those under wraps right now, but I'm going to let everyone know about them when I do the episodes. So music episodes coming every week, along with all of our genre stuff. We're talking to genre movies, a lot of horror. That's where I kind of started the podcast that I run 9 years ago. The Sight and Sound podcast by Heart Guide Media. If you go to our Instagram page and you click on the bio, you get all the links and everything like that. You can listen to a podcast that we've been doing for 9 years. Me and my friends have been doing it, and now, this YouTube channel has been going for a little while, and it's been a lot of fun. So, join me if you're liking these music episodes. If you are a Thursday fan and you love Full Collapse, what is your favorite song off from 2001's Full Collapse by Thursday? This record is great. It's monumental. It changed lives. It changed mine. I'm sure it changed the bands in more ways than one. And, like, comment, subscribe, engage. Let me know you're listening. Go follow us on Instagram at Heart Guide Media, and we will see you later.